This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. It's an important show about a ridiculous topic, a ridiculous story that's out there. And of course, it's backed by the UN. It has everything to do with you listening to this video, because if you're a human being and you're living on this earth, then this will affect you, because this is the law and these are the bills that are going to enslave humanity. There is a story out there, and there's a few, and it's gaining legs. And the reason there's a few is because, remember, repetition and pattern, you're going to see these pop up, about Montana kids from as young as 5, that's right, as young as 5, all the way up into their 20s, have sued the state of Montana, and they're calling it the climate trial, for the federal government failing them, and claiming that the federal government is supposed to take care of the environment for them. I have no idea how they make some of these things up, but we know that the government right now is making up laws, they're making up rules, they're not applying the actual Constitution, which shows you that it doesn't apply anymore to citizens. And this is something they care about, obviously. Why? Why is the UN out there promoting this? Why is our government allowing these kids to sue and then these kids to win when there is no law? There's the Commerce Clause, which has to do with the environment, but it is not a constitutional law or federal law that states that the government is supposed to take care of the environment. But this is what they want. They want the government to take care of the environment. They want the government to enact, and peddle laws on the people of the world so that they can enslave them. So by these children suing, and I'll show you a video clip, you could hear these talking head morons from the news. And of course, we all know about the Illuminati card game and how there's every card in there matches the agendas that are going on from all the way back into the 90s, obviously what happened on the 11th of September, the Pentagon, all the agendas you'll find in there, including, of course, global warming and the climate agenda. This goes back actually even further than that, into the 70s when they were promoting it as global cooling. Then they changed it to global warming conveniently. And of course, like I've said a million times, these people don't have to actually address anything they do or say. They just ignore it. They don't answer questions. They don't, it's a full-on dictatorship that's in place. And the morons out there hear this stuff and they believe everything that they're saying. So we have a lawsuit, and they're enabling 5-year-olds, they're enabling 10-year-olds, and they're enabling Democrats, the people who follow this stuff and believe it because they're so dumb. They're enabling them and empowering them to move forward with these things so that it becomes common in every state. And what's going to become common is things like this, the UN's landmark decision, children's right to sue over the climate. So what ends up happening? You might say, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. You know what ends up happening? The government then says, okay, we're getting sued over the climate. It's now apparently a constitutional right for us to protect the climate and the environment. Your right to free speech is not in the Constitution anymore. Your right to bear arms soon will not be in the Constitution anymore. But we'll focus on important things like taking care of the environment. So in order to take care of the environment, we're going to make everybody go electric. We're going to get rid of fossil fuels. And then we're going to tell everybody, well, you're the ones who demanded it. This is what had to be done. So now we're having more control over your life. And because of this, we're going to start implementing new laws to protect the Constitution, where we're going to pretty much say you can and cannot leave your home when we say, and you're going to be able to do this or do that. And all of it's going to be tracked and monitored by us so we can make sure that we're protecting the climate. And nobody seems to get it. Here's a news clip. Listen to these two morons. They're talking about, oh, these kids, how brave and heroic this is. They're in Montana, by the way, maybe the most beautiful state that exists. And of course, a place there where you could actually go and get clean air, but they pretend like Montana, oh, it's fossil fuels. Montana's disgusting. We need to do something. Our clean air isn't here. I mean, it's absolute absurdity, but everything is flipped upside down. Nothing makes sense anymore unless you know what they're actually doing. But it's amazing that people actually buy into these agendas. But listen to this news clip, and then we'll get into how the UN is helping promote this. And of course the UN is. The UN is the New World Order. The United Nations is the New World Order, the globalist movement. They're the ones who are empowering the WHO, and they're the ones who are going to empower climate laws. Take a look.
A major climate legal case in Montana. Get this. So a state court in Montana ruled in favor of a group of young people. These young people argued that the state of Montana has failed to protect their constitutional right under the state constitution there to a clean environment. That's what the Constitution says, by promoting the use of fossil fuels. So joining us for more on this landmark decision, senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer. So Devin, you've been following this case. Tell us about these plaintiffs, these young people who come to court saying what the state is doing on the environment is violating our right to a clean and healthful environment.
A fascinating case, the first of its kind to go to trial in the country, Terry, and the first decision of this kind in the country. This was a group of 5-year-olds to 22-year-olds, group of plaintiffs. They were backed by an environmental group out of Oregon known as Our Children's Trust, and they sued the state, as you said, over the Constitution. They said that the state was violating their right to a clean and healthful environment by promoting fossil fuels. And what was remarkable in this decision is that the judge, in a methodical way, laid out how state action, state policies were promoting fossil fuels, and that in turn was harming these kids. There was an injury through the wildfires, the drought, the floods that they say they experienced. And in very visceral terms, over 7 days of testimony, they laid out the impacts to their physical and psychological health, and she sided with them. A remarkable decision.
And the court also, because once again, as you point out, this is not an abstract case. The judge heard testimony from the young people, also from scientists and from others, from witnesses for the state saying, no, we aren't doing that. And in the end, she found that their constitutional rights were violated. And the state's going to appeal. What do you think of that?
We knew this was going to be a long shot for these kids to win this case. These kinds of cases have certainly been brought over the past decades. None of them have ever succeeded. So this is an anomaly. This is a bit of a surprise, but the state is vowing to fight this. They said this was a political stunt. They say these sorts of policy decisions about the environment should be left to the elected legislature of the state of Montana. They don't really have a good answer for what to do with the constitutional language, which the text is very clear there. But the bottom line, Terry, with this decision, the state will now have to consider the impacts of climate change, greenhouse gases, in their policy decisions, their permitting for oil and gas facilities and the like. They don't have to do that right now. So that's a practical impact, but symbolically, huge win for these kids and for other climate advocates nationwide.
And I wonder about the impact on environmental law across the country. There was a great Supreme Court justice, as you know, from Montana, Justice William O. Douglas, who grew up there and once argued in the Supreme Court as a justice, he was the lone vote, that trees should have standing to sue because they were getting cut down too much, was his notion. But in this case, this is more closely hewn to the law in Montana. Do you see this having an impact around the country?
It's interesting. It could lead to more states to pass amendments to get this kind of language in their constitutions. Only a handful of states, 3 states, I think, have language like Montana's that guarantees citizens a right to a clean environment. So this could set off a greening of state constitutions as one way to protect citizens, but no question that the very base here, this is going to add pressure on policymakers to do more. Kids in a number of states, Hawaii, Utah, Virginia, right now have cases like this one suing their state governments to do more about climate change. This decision from Montana is certainly going to lift their spirits as they go forward in those trials.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Young people, obviously, the most impacted. They're going to have to live their lives with whatever the effects.
It's their future.
Yeah,
That's right.
Absolutely.
So the frightening headlines out there obviously are promoting this. They're like, oh, environmental rights in state constitutions. There are, environmental rights. It's a loose term that they're using, obviously, to constrict or enslave, I should say, the people of the earth. And that's why the UN's involved, because this isn't just going to be an America thing. Remember, they're going to unite everybody behind this. We're all humans, so we all need to unite. Every country needs to be, we could be at war with Russia, but we still will all promote the climate agenda. So the UN is getting involved, as they always do in these things, and they're going to manipulate, obviously, all the constitutional rights of the citizens and give more power to the governments. And they're going to say, look, the government has to control all these things now because people are not, doing what they're supposed to do to help the environment, and we're all going to end up dead, so the government needs to do this. And the next thing welcome to China. You'll have a social score, a behavioral score. Everything will be monitored and tracked. Everything you buy, everything you eat, everywhere you go. And these imbeciles are just hearing this stuff about the climate on TV and then going about in their day-to-day lives repeating it and even doing things like protesting and doing this stuff. Imagine protesting and doing these things that these climate enthusiasts are doing for absolutely zero reason. Did anybody see the barricade outside of Burning Man, which I covered? If you didn't see that video, I definitely recommend you check it out. The Burning Man ritual that was done with the Phoenix Rising. Climate activists actually protested the road until the police came and drove through their protest, and people were backed up for miles, sitting in the desert sun. Pretty amazing, right? It's going to be incredible because that's a lib thing. when these people eat each other alive. I'm all for it. Go wrestle on the Grand Canyon, like I've said a million times. So the United Nations has recently made a significant announcement that could have far-reaching implications in the fight against climate change. The UN's Committee on the Rights of the Child, a body that interprets international human rights law, has issued a 20-page document recognizing the rights of children to take legal action against governments regarding climate change issues. And again, this is why they target kids. They target kids because they're easy to manipulate and easy to mold. Because they're kids, right? We've all been 5. And, everybody listening, unless you were, born a modern day miracle and you were able to skip from age 4 to 6 or, 4 to 20. I don't know. I mean, is this the movie Big with Tom Hanks? Well, we won't get into Tom Hanks' background. I've done that before, also all scrubbed off the internet. But we've all been 5, right? When you're young, you're easy to mold. That's why the communists and all these dictatorships always target the youth. You can see what's happening in China, how they go after and mold and manipulate the young kids out there. They want control of everybody's kids so they can indoctrinate them with lies and get them to be servants of theirs. They know the rest of us, people like me and you, they're never going to influence us. In fact, they're doing everything they can to silence us because we're helping wake up these same kids that they want to mold and manipulate. That's why they're silencing us. That's why we're a threat to them, because they cannot have the youth out there actually find out what's going on. They want the entire youth to be fully under mind control, and they are for the most part. Democrats and the youth, especially the Democrats who have kids who indoctrinate their kids themselves just by doing the government's bidding. So they have the rights of children to take legal action. So we have 5-year-old. I mean, isn't that amazing? Like the clip I showed you, they were talking about 5-year-olds being in court suing the federal government. Pretty amazing. And of course they win, right? Of course, then all the liberals see that. They're like, oh, they won because, it just shows you that these 5-year-olds know more about what's going on than the adults know. And they're more interested in it because they're getting full-on mind control. These 5-year-olds are getting climate agenda propaganda and gender-neutral propaganda from the cartoons, from the stuff as little as 3 years old on Disney. 3-year-olds are seeing this stuff where they're doing Pride, they're doing Blue's Clues, is putting all this stuff in about the climate. That's why they're out there pushing it. They don't even know what they're saying or what they're talking about. They're just repeating it. Like, look at kids who were 5 years old 50 years ago. They're walking around dressed up as Star Wars characters. Some of them still doing it today, right? Or acting like so-and-so or trying to emulate their favorite sports athlete, right? Well, these kids are pushing the agendas because all the TV shows are filled with the agendas. So then the media goes, look how smart these kids are. You know what comes after that, right? Oh, 5-year-olds win a lawsuit against adults and the government shows how smart they are. Maybe 5-year-olds really are like adults. Maybe they should be able to pick who they want to date, even if it's a 40-year-old. That's what's next. That's what's coming from this. They're adulting kids. I've been saying it for a decade. Nobody listened to me then. People kind of are listening to me now, but nobody can really find me these days because I'm a new YouTuber. But they are doing this by design, okay? That ties into it perfectly. They're going to continue to tell you that kids are smarter than adults because the kids are the ones repeating the propaganda. And they'll say people like me and you are misinformation idiots, even though, give me a break. These people don't even know what they're saying. And then they go, the facts tell us this. Scientists tell, what scientists? Who? And they just use these words to act like they know what they're talking about. So they're using the kids, manipulating kids, and brainwashing the kids. So they love a story like this. Obviously, they won, and this was by design. Of course they won in court. Of course they did, because it's the first of its kind. And we're going to hear more and more about it. So the basis for the UN's decision, the decision is rooted in the Convention of the Rights of the Child, a treaty that has been ratified by every nation except the United States. The treaty, that's coming, obviously. Let's be real. We'll see the Biden administration sign this very soon, I'm sure, on national television. Everybody will applaud it and be like, look how smart kids are. Go hang out with Joe. Anyway, this treaty asserts that children have the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. This right is directly linked to their overall well-being and development. While the committee's interpretation doesn't carry the same weight as a law, it highlights the importance of a children's voices in advocating for environmental protection. The committee's document underscores that all countries bear a legal obligation to protect children from environmental degradation. What legal obligation is this, by the way? Now all of a sudden they're telling us it's a legal obligation of the government to protect the environment. Never heard that 20 years ago. They just penciled it in, I guess, and then they're telling people that it's now in there. Right? They're going to pencil in next that kids can castrate themselves. Be like, it's the kid's constitutional right to castrate himself at 2 years old. Oh, is it? Is it? It's insanity is what it is. So, and again, they could just make this stuff up and they'll be like, duh, it's always been in the Constitution. They'll tell people like me and you, it's in the Constitution. It's always been in the Constitution. You're just an idiot and didn't know. No, it's actually not in the Constitution. Okay? Like I said earlier, if you look up any stuff on this, if you want to research it, feel free. Let me know the bullcrap you find that probably has just been put on the internet by the government, but there's nothing behind this. And obviously, we're all taught, when we were kids, we were taught the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In school, you had to memorize it. There's a reason they're not telling kids to memorize those things now, because they don't want them to know what the laws or their rights are. And obviously, they also want to change these things and just be like, oh, yeah, you don't need to know that. We're just telling you that this is in there now, right? And then all the adults who know that it's not, well, they're all dying off, and we know why. That's another story for another day. So only on the website can you talk about that. But they say the ruling essentially states that children have the right to hold governments accountable for their actions or inactions that contribute to the environmental harm. What about adults, by the way? Why are they targeting the word kids? Oh, right. Because they know if they use children and the term children, it'll get more people involved, including Republicans, and consider, oh, well, the children, what about their future, right? These same people who sacrifice them to Baal, which goes back to the Old Testament, again, these people do not have any interest in children. They hate children, in fact, more than anything. So they're talking about the ruling essentially saying that children have a right to hold governments accountable because they care about kids, but yet every single one of these people who promotes these agendas promotes Planned Parenthood, right? See how that works? Works like an oxymoron, because that's really what this stuff is. So they talk about the road ahead, actions and challenges. The committee's document emphasizes several actions that nations should undertake immediately. That includes phasing out coal, oil, and natural gas in favor of renewable energy sources, improving air quality, combating marine pollution, and protecting biodiversity. So, talk about marine pollution. How about those? And I covered that on the website. Maybe I'll upload a video similar to it here. I talked about the wind turbines out in the ocean, what it's doing to the animals. You see all these videos of animals washing up on shore, doing things that they don't normally do, being extra aggressive, attacking boats. Oh, it's because of the wind turbines, because of what's coming out of them, the frequencies. They're messing with the marine life's frequencies. You know how like Echo the dolphin or whatever, the dolphin, the video game, the dolphin, he used to shoot the rays out of his head, right? That's how they communicate, right? Well, it's all messed up because of the wind turbines in the ocean. So they don't know what they're doing. They're running into boats. They're washing up ashore. But in that statement right there, they talk about the document encouraging children, and then they go on to say, children to sue. And then they say, that they want to phase out coal, oil, and natural gas because they're going to make it a law that you can't have these things. They're going to make it a law. And they don't mention the fact that these electric vehicles constantly are exploding and catching fire. Isn't that interesting how they never mention that? Never, right? All one has to do is learn about lithium batteries. And in fact, if you want to talk about carbon emissions, you know how many carbon emissions are emitted creating lithium batteries? They won't tell you that. So, of course not, because it's all a lie. It's a lie for the suckers to believe, and the suckers do believe it. And the scary part is that they've enabled the suckers, so the suckers are literally stonewalling anything they hear, and they are so narcissistic and prideful. They think that what they're saying is actually truth. It's pretty crazy. It's a different species of human we're living among. So anyway, they're calling this a stepping stone for climate action. While the UN committee's document doesn't create new legal mandates, it does provide essential guidance and recognition of children's rights in the context of climate change. So you're going to see, just like in China where you see these children in the military, you're going to see this communist children uprising here. Not to use that word, but you know what I mean? We're going to see one here of all these kids who are completely under propaganda and mind control, who have zero idea about anything. Anything. They're going to be soldiers for this. They're going to be soldiers against adults. I mean, how much predictive programming have we seen in movies and shows where the kids rise up against the adults? That's what they're promoting here, and that's communism. Okay, these kids, like off the top of your head, just think of one, like Children of the Corn. There's plenty of others. And especially recently, Amazon Prime has been releasing. I'll cover that in a separate video. But again, child's rights, children's rights, right? And these people out there who promote Planned Parenthood, who want kids to castrate themselves, also tie into this, right? They're like, I think a kid should castrate themselves because they have the right to make that decision. Just like they should be able to sue the government at 5 years old. Does a 5-year-old have a clue? No, they don't. What grade are 5-year-olds in, by the way? What are they in? Kindergarten, first grade? I mean, real. And they're like, they're smarter than adults. Look at them, how brave. And that's what the media will do, right? They'll twist it. They're so brave and strong and so smart. Next thing you know, the news anchor will be holding hands with the 5-year-old and they'll be like, no, that's not my son. That's my boyfriend. Oh, well, that's cute. That's what they'll say. That's what they'll say. You know what we'll say and do. We see that out in the open. But this is the UN. Again, the UN loves this. The UN supports this because it's the UN who is stripping your rights. It's the UN and the globalists who are taking our rights and using climate as a facade to do that, right? Look at Maui. Look at these places. They're using a boogeyman. They're frying people. They're using weaponized weather to create hurricanes, to flood people out. Katrina to Florida over and over again, like we just saw, and over the years, right? To what happened in Maui, to hurricanes in California. So they're using these things not just to flood and wipe people out, but they're also using it on the other end, where they're coming out and they're saying we need more restrictions and laws in place because the world's in such chaos from the climate. And then they'll have all these people suing, these kids suing, and it's just going to get unbelievably out of control. And of course, this was once called Agenda 2030, and it's now called Agenda 2025. So these things will be rolled in very, very soon unless we do something about it. And everybody does need to do something about it. It's absolutely frightening. I thank everyone for being here. I hope you're all doing well. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I always enjoy reading the comments. God bless all of you as always and your families.